guys, so before I get too far into this video, there are two big things that I want to address regarding where I film and how I film. So first off, as you may know if you've been following my recent videos, I've been trying out different areas to film. Usually I film right here with this plain boring wall behind me, but I decided to try out the garage, and you guys seem to like that, so I think I might permanently move out there. And then I've also gotten a few suggestions, you should put some stuff behind you, put like a Saab poster or something, and I don't really have any stuff that I can put behind there, if that makes sense. Like I don't have any posters or anything like that, so I was thinking if you guys have stuff that you want to send me that I can hang up back here, go ahead and shoot me an email or a DM on Instagram and I will gladly accept whatever you have to send me, assuming it's appropriate, and I'll hang it up back behind on the wall. So yeah, now let's get into the topic of today's video. So I have been wondering this for a couple weeks now, and I finally decided to make a video on it, and that is, what would have happened if Koenigsegg had bought Saab? Because back in 2009, when GM was looking for a buyer for Saab, GM and Koenigsegg got very, very close to coming to a deal for Koenigsegg to purchase Saab. So first off, I want to talk about what that deal was and why it didn't go through. Second off, I want to talk about what GM and Saab's options were after that deal didn't go through. And thirdly, I want to talk about if it did go through, would Saab still be around today? What would they look like? Would Koenigsegg and Saab sort of still be working together and making amazing cars? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. I will be using a few articles that I'll kind of share on the screen here with you guys so you can read along with me. Just because I'm going to be doing a lot of speculating and also grabbing information from these articles. And if you are interested in reading these articles in full detail, I will put a link to them at the top of the description box. So this article from Car and Driver does a really good job of explaining why it makes sense that this deal should and at the time would happen. First off, they make the point that the closest connection we can come up with is that the Saab, the Born from Jets ad they use, and Koenigsegg are both headquartered in a decommissioned Swedish fighter jet base. So also, I do want to touch briefly on Koenigsegg. Koenigsegg is a small company based in Sweden, obviously, run by Christian von Koenigsegg, who is one of the amazing geniuses of the car world. But back in the early 2000s, he took some of his and his dad's money and developed his own car. And he started selling it, making very limited number cars, and they've come out with more and more just amazing cars that put up absolutely absurd numbers. Like the Koenigsegg 1-to-1 was the first car to have 1 kilogram for every 1 horsepower it produced, which I think is just insane when you think about that. But he's just come up with, that Koenigsegg also holds the top speed record, which they most recently broke for a production car, which is just super cool. But anyways, that's pretty much what Koenigsegg is. They're like a super exclusive, expensive supercar development group, I guess. I mean, they make super awesome cars. So Christian von Koenigsegg didn't really talk about this deal much, but in one interview, he was quoted as saying, "Our ambition is to build a Swedish car company with all that implies." So I think that he basically wanted to keep what Saab was and what made Saab great, which was its Swedishness, its quirkiness, all those good things. So I'm glad that that's what they wanted to do, because I think if you try and take that away from Saab, then it would have just become like a normal BMW, Volvo, Audi, Not to say that those are bad, because they're all still great cars, but it would take away from the uniqueness that is Saab. And then here are the few red flags that pop up to me from this article that, reading it now in the future and knowing what happened, definitely makes sense. And he also says that the local media was initially shocked as Saab was that tiny Koenigsegg, which built just 18 cars in 1 year, and could acquire and oversee a company that has 4,500 employees and sold more than 90,000 vehicles in 2008. So when you just compare those numbers, how much more just manpower and production numbers that Koenigsegg would have to undertake and deal with. I'm not saying they couldn't do it, but when you think about basically like a family-owned company, you think of like a family-owned business, and then them trying to buy, not necessarily like a McDonald's, but like a big like established chain or something like that. It doesn't make sense, and it's really hard to do. So here's the second big red flag that I got from this article, that this sale would have involved a $600 million loan from the European Investment Bank, which is backed by the Swedish government, which basically means that Koenigsegg would come out of this deal in severe debt. And given the fact that Saab never really made GM or themselves any money, it doesn't make sense. So I think that red flag, I think that's the bigger one of the two, not necessarily the size difference between Saab and Koenigsegg, but just the amount of money that Koenigsegg would have to go into debt in order to buy Saab, and how long. If, let's say, they were super successful, I mean, I'm sure if they were super successful, even now, 8-9 years later, they'd still be in the hole with this deal and would still be trying to repay that debt, which doesn't really make sense financially, and it would take them a very, very long time to start making money. So that's pretty much it from this article. I mean, I do like the little question here at the end, this little cliffhanger where the author says, is it too early to put a deposit on a 1,000 horsepower Saab 93X? I think that's pretty funny. But now I want to move to the next article, which basically comes later that year in November of 2009, when the news broke that Koenigsegg was not buying Saab. From all the articles I read, they didn't give any solid reason saying, this is why this deal didn't go through. And I think, personally, the reason why it didn't go through are from the two reasons that I just mentioned, the two big red flags, which are the size difference between the two and the debt that Koenigsegg would be in. Those are the two big reasons that really made me think that, yeah, this is just, as much as everyone wants to see this happen, it's not going to happen. And I think that Koenigsegg and Saab both desperately wanted this deal to happen because they know that's what they wanted in their hearts. That's what all the people, all the Saab enthusiasts, that's what everyone wanted in their hearts. But then when you look at it from a financial perspective, from a numbers perspective, and you put your thinking cap on and use your non-biased brain and think, does that really make sense? And I think that's what Koenigsegg finally realized, and they're like, yeah, this is going to probably completely screw us over, and we're going to end up probably having to shut down our own company because of it. So one thing I like about this article is that it gives a list of possible buyers of Saab. And I think it's pretty funny because they bring up the whole Volvo and Chinese thing, you know. And that makes sense because, of course, Saab is now owned by Nevs, which is both a Swedish and Chinese company. Although a lot of people like to argue that's a Chinese company, but it's really not. Anyways, from what this article was saying, it looked like there were a couple of big potential Chinese buyers for Saab, neither of which were Nevs. I don't even know if Nevs existed at that time. I'm sorry if I'm being ignorant here, but I honestly don't know. Anyways, one of them was the Dongfeng Motor Company, which was one of the 27 businesses expressing an interest in buying Saab at the start of the bidding process. So I think that pretty much everyone in the car world would have hated to see a company like Saab go to a Chinese company who would probably just ruin them, which is why I'm glad that Nevs, although partly Chinese, is really taking steps to keep the Saab uniqueness. But I feel like Dongfeng, or whatever it's called, is one of those companies that would just basically turn Saab into like cheap economy cars and completely ruin everything that Saab is about, just so that way they could make a few bucks. So outside of those possible buyers that they mentioned, they go on and talk about some other possible outcomes for Saab, and they bring up the good point that Koenigsegg's deal to buy Saab reached advanced stages, and yet even then they realized they couldn't make the numbers stack up. So then they also bring up these two what they call doomsday scenarios, and one of them was the Swedish government, which could in theory prop up Saab for longer in the hope of a realistic purchaser being found. And then of course they say that the harsh reality is that Saab could now go into the wall or go under, basically what happened in real life. And it really sucks because they also point out that GM already had shut down Saturn, and they're kind of starting to cut weight and get rid of these companies that aren't really making them big bucks. And you can't really fault GM for that. Saab just didn't make them money, and it really sucks. So now let's talk about what would happen if Koenigsegg did buy Saab. What would happen if that deal did go through? And let's just assume that financially everything worked out. They're making money now. They're all happy. Money is not a problem. So I want to know. I'm going to give my thoughts on it, and I want to know what you guys think they would have done with Saab. So personally, I think that they would have obviously come out with the new 9.5. The new 9.3 would have come out probably a year or two after that. My guess would have been as a 2013, maybe 2014 model. possibly as that 9.3 Phoenix concept I just did a video on, which I think is a great car. And I also think that they would have, I mean, it's too hard not to do this. I think they would have also taken a 9.3, maybe turned it into a coupe, or maybe kept it as a sedan, and just stuck a Koenigsegg V8 in there. Probably naturally aspirated. I don't think they would go for like 1100 horsepower or something like they do in their other cars. But I think that would have been really cool for them to stick a V8 in a 9.3. I don't know. I don't know, guys. There's just so much that could have happened, so many good things that could have happened, so much speculation that you don't know. There's no right answer. And I think that Koenigsegg definitely would have stayed true to Saab and wouldn't have tried to, you know, blend it in with everyone else, and they would have tried to keep it different. But I don't know. I don't know. I want to know what you guys think. What do you think if Koenigsegg had bought Saab? What do you think would have happened? And assuming that everything worked out financially, there were no problems, what do you think would have happened? Would they have even added more models? Would they have brought back a car like the 94X and made another crossover, another SUV like the 97X? Of course, it wouldn't be on a GM platform then. Do you think they would have made like another big like S-Class size car, you know, instead of just having the 9.3, 9.5, have something called, well, I guess you can't really use the 9.7 name, but you know what I mean? Like, what do you think they would have done? I'm really interested to hear what you guys would think. I'm going to stop talking and rambling at this point. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.